Okay, I think that'll do. Should be streaming. I think we're streaming. So hey folks, good evening. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, actually coming up in about 2 or 3 minutes, because I am running a couple of minutes late tonight. So please forgive me. Yeah, alright, Daily Chaos. One minute, people. 1 minute. And copyright free Facebook. Yeah, copyright free. Copyright free Facebook. Okay. A little bit of technical chaos here. Chris, have you got your camera on, mate?
It seems to have dropped off.
Oh, has it? Is it now? Yeah. What about you, Rodders?
Yep, I'm on. Can you hear me?
You've got your have you got your camera on?
Yes.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Why can't I see you? I can't see either of you. I mean, it's
Really?
no real loss. Yeah. I don't know what's going on there. Very odd. Most peculiar. Now, hold on. Now, then I could see Boozy, Chris. I could see you then. I don't know what you did. What did you do that I could see you suddenly?
I tried turning it off and on again.
Go. Hey, Rodders, there's a clue. Did you hear that?
Oh, hang on. What did I do? I turned...
Turn off the video thing and put it back on. For crying out loud, I tell you, you can't get the guests.
I know. Does that work?
Hey? Oh, hold on. Bear with me. Nope, still can't see you. I mean...
All right. Let me do it again.
Might be a good thing. I don't know. Do it again.
It's
I've just got that picture.
It did take me time, so it...
Oh no, I haven't got him. I have got him, but I haven't got him. It's kind of strange. It's weird. Do you know? I'll tell you what. I'm going to call you back, Rodders. I'm going to call you straight back. Is that all right? And you're looking very dapper tonight.
Of course
sir.
it is.
Yeah, good. Wonderful. Call you straight back.
Oh, blimey. Guess what? Running late. Copyright free Facebook. Yeah. For crying out loud. Oh, dear. How are you supposed to patch someone into this? I don't know. Crying out loud. Oh, there we go. Add.
new group. Him. Right. See if that works. Right. That's Rodders.
Can you see?
No, I can't see you.
Hang on, try this.
See you. Oh, there you go. I can see you now. Boozy. Boozy. I think he's on the other call. I think he's on the other call. Now I've cut Boozy off. Yeah. Oh, look, I'll call you straight back. Rodders. I apologize. Oh no, he's here now. Boozy.
Yeah. I was just having to wait for it to kick in on my computer.
Oh, lovely. Now do us a favour and jiggle your knob. Post PC. The post PC world. Jiggle your knob, mate. Boozy.
Which not?
Press the camera icon and that.
Yeah, because it's still showing the hangover from the last call, so I'm trying to get it trying to get my computer to catch up, and then I can get onto the right screen.
All right, okay, all right. We all need to catch up.
I'll be with you momentarily.
That's lovely. That's great. That's fine. No worries. Nearly there, people. Nearly there. Going to be about one more minute.
I can see.
I can see you both. Yeah, I can see you both. God, hold on. Let me patch it in. Let me see if I can patch this in so we can see you both on the old screen thing as well. I bet you like this music, people, don't you? Great music, no? They're going to be headlining at Glastonbury this year.
Jolly good.
Copyright free, Nick Clegg. Right, so that'll do. Hold on. Any joy?
Can you see me?
Live. See if we can get that. Does that work? Oh, hold on. I can see you both. I'm just now trying to patch you into this super duper streaming software.
Moderator. Okay.
Oh, just bear with me, people. Yeah, I've got a new system. Yeah, I've got a new. Every show I seem to have a new system, and it always breaks. And but the bottom line with this system is quite clever because it means that you have your Skype caller, your guest on the screen, and when somebody calls in, their telephone number isn't shown up on the screen, which is probably a good idea. And so it's kind of what I'm trying to do, but it is all a big cock up, I tell you. Hold on a sec, I'm going to try something else. Bear with me, we're nearly there. Have some copyright free.
For those who...
Hold on. Oh, floating your boat. This is very nice, this one. And coming up, I promise. Eventually. Oh, I do apologise. Unbelievable. I'll tell you what.
Living in the same routine.
Oh, this guy's a bit depressive.
Seasons I'm on repeat. It's a long way down.
Yeah.
Trying not to follow suit. Don't like the color, I'll change the shade of it. I'm not afraid of it. I know
There's a moral to this somewhere.
Holding on to this. Holding on. know I'm holding on to this.
Oh no, he's going to get upset now.
Don't let me repeat it. Don't let me repeat it.
That'll do. That'll do. Hey, folks. Good evening, good people. Welcome to the Daily Chaos. Holding democracy to account, fighting for self-determination and exposing technology. Bears of little brain. I'm Olly Connelly. Thanks for turning up. I apologise for keeping you waiting. And now, post-PC, with a POTUS who fist bumps Her Majesty, and perhaps a PM who calls out letterboxes. Is the Western world in danger of regaining our blitz-spirit sense of humour? The kind of attitude that has previously famously saved us from tyranny. Or should we continue to look as though we're all sat on pencils, pointy-fresh and straight from the BBC News Department, awaiting arrest by the Libtard police? Reverend Sir Chris Boozy and Viscount St David's attempt Facebook jail right here, right now. Please support grassroots journalism. PayPal.me/Brexit. Thank you. Share the show, like the thing, all that. Right. Well, I suppose after all that we should have a roll call just to make sure, first of all, that I've got my guests finally. So, good evening, Boozy, Chris Boozy, Reverend Chris Boozy. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. From the June of San Diego.
Ah, wonderful. Thank you, thank you. And Viscount St David's, Rodders, can you hear me, sir?
Indeed I can. And pleasure to meet you. Now, is it Father Boozy or Boozy?
Just call me Chris. I'll call you Chris.
Deal done.
Now, look, hold on a sec. A couple of ground rules. First of all, Chris, who was so kind as to get himself a headset for today's show, and it doesn't work now. The microphone bit of it doesn't work. So, Chris, please get a bit closer to your laptop so that we can hear you. And for some reason...
Not a problem.
Okay, jolly good. Excellent. And I don't know why. I've got no idea why, but... Rodders isn't on the screen when he's not talking. It's probably because I've done the wrong thing and cocked it up and what have you. I just want to make sure, folks, that you haven't got any echo as well, and I suspect that you do, because, I mean, hey, why would it be sensible if anything worked properly? So let me just get rid of that. I don't think there will be any echo from the guest now. I think I just got rid of that. Let me just make sure also that you can... see us on the great big world of social media before we check out and see what's going on in the world of fake stream today.
which doubtless will take us very neatly into the world of political correctness, because it's also politically correct, until we get our very own UK Trump, aka Boris Johnson. Right, okay, there was some echo, but I think that's probably gone now. Let me just quickly open that up in a new... I do apologise, folks, yeah. I do apologise. You know, I was supposed to be so organised for today's show, and I don't know what happened. It all went tits up and what have you. Will take us very neatly into the world of... Okay, fine. Right, so... in the world of a fake stream today, and I'll show you this as well. According to Breitbart, their top story, Johnson, it would be bizarre for EU to enact Napoleonic trade barriers after a no-deal Brexit. Tory heavyweight Boris Johnson, one of the two men vying to capture the leadership of their party, and hence become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has warned if the European Union opposed his plan to enact Brexit, they would be affecting a return to Napoleon Bonaparte's failed 19th century plan to bankrupt Britain. Boris Johnson's comments strongly implying Europe refusing to be cooperative over Britain's withdrawal from the European Union would be a deliberate attempt, purge the thought, to undermine and weaken the country, came as he was grilled on his plans for enacting Brexit, something he has promised to do by October the 31st at the latest. I don't think it's quite as simple as that from what I heard on Newsnight last night, I have to say. But anyway, the would-be future Prime Minister dismissed criticism of his withdrawal plan by asserting the utility of the World Trade Organization's General Agreement on Tariffs, GATT, and trade, better known as GATT, and specifically Article 24 as a potential solution to the Brexit deadlock that has plagued British politics for 3 years. And got Mr. H, Robin Horsley, coming on tomorrow to discuss GATT 24, by the way. Yes, please, Rodders.
Ollie, I just wanted to chip in because there was a significant event about 10 days ago which actually has considerable bearing on this point, and that's why I dare to interrupt. 5,500 European arrest warrants have been dismissed by the European Court of Justice, and these arrest warrants, 5,500 of them, some of which have been enforced, so there are people in prison right now in Germany, and this harks back to a law, I believe it was passed in 1879 by the Iron Chancellor, who was responsible for the unification of Germany. And what this law effectively did is it subjugated criminal justice to local politicians. And the European Court of Justice, after over 100 years, 2 world wars, has all of a sudden recognized that criminal justice cannot be subjugated to politicians. So the notion that a 19th century process of law is in any way applicable is a complete and utter bloody nonsense.
What do you guys think? Chris, what do you think of Boris Johnson and all this tabloid stuff that's been going on? Just as a bit of an aside here, whilst we're talking about...
Right. Basically, my thoughts are, I don't trust him an iota. However, the biggest reason I don't trust him is because Boris cares about Boris and nobody else. Now, what happens with Brexit all depends on which threat to his person he worries most about. Does he worry more about the Bilderbergers and the like, and then being dissatisfied with him in pushing through a full Brexit, and they're not above killing him. Let's be blunt. Or
Jesus. God bless you,
yeah,
sir.
Yeah.
Or carry on. Yeah.
Is he more worried about the thing we were potentially going to talk about, the Pfizergate issue, where as a dual US British citizen, we could end up having a diplomatic crisis, because we could very well see, well, by logic, we could see a sitting British Prime Minister extradited with no extradited to the United States, because he's a US citizen. We don't actually have a say in the matter, to face high crimes, which would include everything up to and including the death penalty. So is he more scared of Trump taking him through the courts as a potential,
or Ken Clark's old
or is he
club?
more scared of the Bilderbergers? And that's where it will come down to.
That's an interesting take on that. What would you say to that, Viscount St David's? What would you say to that?
Well, actually, Chris, you covered a range of topics. Each one
minestrone
is worthy of discussion. Okay, so we've ended up with extradition.
Let me take it back to the core question then. What are your thoughts on Boris, and what are your thoughts on the way he's being presented, if you like, in this campaign by various different sides of the debate? Okay.
Well, if we go back to Chris's earlier comment that he's in it for himself, I don't disagree at all, and it marks a change in the nature of politics. Politics used to be a vocation, which Chris, as a priest ordained, as I understand it, you'll appreciate. It was a vocation. Now it's become a career, and I think I've been rather consistent on the careerist element of our modern MP. Is Boris good for the country? Well, do you know what? He campaigned for Brexit as a Brexiteer. That's all I can go on. What happens thereafter, frankly, is it's chucking spaghetti in the air. Who the hell knows? In terms of how the media campaign has been, the media are worse than I think they've ever been. Frankly, his private life shouldn't be revealed, exposed. It's not part of his campaign. Twice married, so what? I think you've got these liberals and libertarians in the 21st century, and we're talking about transgender rights. Well, in actual fact, you can't then throw the rule book saying, well, in actual fact, you're a divorcee. You know what I mean? There's a conflict here of principles. And the principles are, what? God is kind and forgiving, and that one is aimed at you, Chris. Yeah. Is political debate meant to be based on whether or not you've had an argument with your missus, and you've got two opponents who live next door who've recorded it and sent that violation of neighbourly love to the bloody Guardian newspaper because they don't agree with the politics.
Yeah, it does seem very cynical. One of them received funding for a play by the EU, which was an anti-Brexit play and stuff like that. It does all seem rather somewhat construed. And what about this?
They didn't even record from their own apartment as if it was in effect a noise complaint. Mm-hmm. They actually went out onto the landing and recorded outside their front door.
That's correct. Not even that. They lived in the flat below, and they went upstairs and put the tape recorder to the front door of the neighbours. That's how they got the recording.
They couldn't even justify it as it's a noise complaint, and we recorded a noise complaint in order to complain to the police. They've actually done something which is, from my background in intelligence, they have done illegal surveillance.
Well, I mean, it is kind of a bit of a questionable point that it does make you want. I hear what you say. I just want to read another story briefly before I ask you guys what you think about the other guy. Tory leader live. Boris Johnson finally speaks out about Carrie Symonds' row on the campaign trail. According to the Sexpress, Tory leadership hopeful Boris Johnson has finally addressed the row with girlfriend Carrie Symonds that was despicably recorded by his lefty neighbour and sent to The Guardian. And a visit today to the Royal Horticultural Society's gardens at Wisley in Surrey. Brexiteer Mr. Johnson was greeted by supporters. One woman told him, "We thought you were the best from the word go," before adding jokingly, according to the Express, "Just don't have any more rows." Mr. Johnson replied, "No more rows. No, no, no. All quiet. All quiet." Mr. Johnson said,
There's a man with a sense of humour. And in that fact, what I hope from Mr. Johnson are several more rows. First of all, with members of his own party.
Yes.
Second, with European leaders, pointing out to them that we are leaving on October 31st. Well, actually, we've already left. Is the legal reality as far as I'm concerned in respect to the Tilbrook case, and I think the nation should be concerned. But we don't want someone who's not a fighter. I want a male Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you.
Wouldn't it be good if Mr. Johnson, who is quite a history buff, is he not?
Yes, he had classes.
Exactly, and would therefore know the history, maybe know some historical laws.
Yes, he had
still exist on this on the books, and maybe just, I don't know, take some of the most arch and virulent Remoaners and have them put to trial for crimes such as subversion.
Do you know what? Chris, the thing is that our legal system, in actual fact, has been subjugated. And that was the point I was making about the German case, which actually is very important. And I should have given the heads up on earlier in writing, to be frank. Let me come back to Germany. If you can imagine, you have a country which has issued 5,500 arrest warrants, many of which have been executed. So you've got people in jail right now. And the European Court of Justice has said, in actual fact, Germany has no legal right to issue warrants of arrest in criminal matters because of a law that was created in 1879. Isn't that concerning for you? How many people have been arrested under the criminal justice system where the law determines that in actual fact the judges, and it comes back to your earlier point, I'm sorry, I'm being slightly long-winded. We haven't put our hands up and said, yes, okay, well, we've got judges whose decisions and discretion will be manipulated by politicians and the politics of the day. That's the point I think you're trying to make. Subversion. In whose eyes? Ultimately, in a criminal trial, you've got a jury. You do not have a jury in Germany. In the highest courts, you only have 3 judges, 2 lay assessors. I know, I've been there.
Because it's because they work under a different system to us. Even though we have had some subversives in our judicial system trying to do a jury trial for most things, hence the soldier F in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, and soldiers BNF, but I think those are slightly separate. In that, if you look at trials, it is not for our judges to be given a political heads up from the current heads of either the CPS or the DPP. It is a matter of, if you've broken the law, you have to be a purist, and you apply your discretion based on your knowledge of law and precedent. Because the political colour changes doesn't mean, and if you look at, for example, sentencing in rape cases, if you are white and Christian and you've raped a child, which is a horrendous offence, you're going to be sentenced in a very different way to if you were one of the Rotherham gang. And I'm looking just mathematically. There's no hint of racism in the way in the manner in which I'm presenting it. But the reality is, sentencing amongst the Asian community for equivalent offences is out of kilter with the sentencing of white Christians stroke British-born folks. How do you weigh that one up? There is clearly...
It's not justice.
No, the answer... But where does it emanate from? From where does it begin that we just had notice of that the 1982 investigation into paedophile gangs of Asians, in actual fact, was covered up. Where did that come from? What is the font of that behaviour?
Well, that's political correctness, no?
Well,
yes, it is.
But where does it come from? I mean, Chris, I'll lay my stall out now. I'm a humanist. I believe that all men are equal under the eyes of God. And if you believe in praying mantises or what have you, I don't care. We have basic human rights. However, we've created political systems which, in actual fact, differentiate between certain groups of individuals.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
look,
are.
I'm going to move. I want to move
legal
this on a
stuff
bit.
is obviously quite of a high. There's such nuance in it, and unfortunately, I believe we've lost our way. And the part of the reason we've lost our way is because certain groups have got involved. And actually, something I have written down in my notes is quite interesting and brings on to the when you look at it in the US system, actually explains some of the things that have been happening in the US in relation to certain persons in certain positions of power and where they would have got some of their ideas from. And that all actually ties in with the topic at hand, which is political correctness.
Which permeates most sectors of our society. Why is it that we have a political class and a social class who have become apologists for a cultural philosophy, which is multiculturalism? Now, we just had Angela Merkel, I think it was last week, Ollie, was it not, who said that multiculturalism in Germany has failed. Now,
Did she?
yeah,
she did say something like that. Yeah, that's right. And yet she still wants it.
Well, yeah. But the point is that she's had to admit and stated that it's failed. Now, the point being is, if we come to the roots, I'm going to say something which might sound sharp, but actually is more a question for analysis. Why are we apologists for cultural groups that we brought into our country that we treat in a very different way? Is it because we feel that they're inferior and we've got to make up for them because we're superior?
That's right.
Why are we apologists?
It's nonsense. It's nonsense. If you go to someone else's culture and it's supposedly your adopted culture, then you should grasp it with both hands and become integrated, or else Ollie, not go. I mean, Ollie, frankly, is there anything wrong with that? Sorry?
Ollie, I was going to say, go on holiday to Dubai, get lagered up with a girl, your wife even, in a bikini, and kiss her on the beach, and you're going to be banged up, and you're facing 5 to 8 years in prison because it's against their bloody culture.
I did actually have a run-in once at Dubai airport. We'll talk about that another time. But yeah, they're a funny lot. They really are. And I was wearing a slightly provocational T-shirt, I suppose, when I walked through. But nonetheless, and anyway, yeah, Dubai's a funny place run by a bunch of mafia weirdos.
About things that I've done in Dubai where, had I got caught, I would have been in a lot of trouble.
Well, look, the fact is though that when you're in when in Rome, and this is one of the problems we've got. No, I mean we have a wonderful, and this is really Boris versus Hunt. largely inspired the theme of tonight's show, as did my two guests, because they're both quite interesting in this respect, because neither of them are particularly PC, and neither am I. I can't stand political correctness, because it's a political invention to control people, and we can talk about that in a second. And I think that Boozy's done a bit of research into the origins of this political correctness contraption.
Booze has done some research.
Chris Boozy. The Reverend.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's the way you pronounce it.
But the point is, though, is it not, that we have a society which is so uptight, and it is not the way we were brought up. Us lot, I think we're about the same age. We're halfway dead. And we were brought up on some comedy. It was good fun. And people would have a laugh. And
they're banning Dad's
our
Army.
grandparents, they had to go through a war, and they had to keep the pecker up. And they managed to get through the war with that. And we seem now to have lost that. And we lost our character.
Don't mention the war.
Okay, go on. Sorry, now go on. I was having a rant. Now riposte.
But I was just saying, and we were brought up on this comedy, and the most favourite Fawlty Towers episode in Germany is Don't Mention the War.
Yeah.
Well, hang on, Chris. What I'd like to point, what you say, you talk about our generation. A very famous story about the Duke of Wellington, the Iron Duke, having defeated Napoleon Bonaparte at Waterloo. He was invited to a reception in Vienna, and in a royal palace in Vienna, numerous guests. As he entered the room, the French guests turned their backs on him. The Austrian hosts, the Duchess or whatever she's called, approached the Duke and said, "I must apologise, Your Grace." And he said, "Oh, no problem at all. I've seen their backs before." Now, is that Dad's army? Is that Dad's army or what? But we're talking 100.
Right.
It's
Dad's army.
Military.
Hey.
Sorry.
Okay, Dad's Army, Dad's Army, a bit of a story going on right now, today, funnily enough. Breitbart again, TV producer, cancel classic comedy Dad's Army because it makes Britons pro-Brexit. A television producer has said that the BBC should cancel repeats of classic British comedy Dad's Army because it makes the broadcaster appear pro-Brexit and inspires pro-leave sentiments in Britain. If he honestly thinks that the BBC is pro-Brexit, he is living in a different planet. I'm sorry. That's just completely... That's comedy!
When you consider the Nazi origins of the EU, then we're fighting the Nazis then, and we're fighting the Nazis now.
That's right.
Correct. Absolutely spot on. Now, coming back to comedy, Ollie, shortly after my arrest, on the Gina Miller case.
You were arrested for something that was very un-PC, sir, were you not? Just briefly tell us what it was, because it does sum up it qualifies you very well for this show.
Well, I had a private Facebook page, so the humour was intended only for those people, and I wrote the following words in early hours of the morning. It was to do with Gina Miller. And I think I wrote something along the lines of 5,000 sovereigns or guineas or pounds for the first person to accidentally run over this bloody troublesome first-generation immigrant. Mm-hmm. If this is what we should expect from these immigrants, send them back to their stinking jungles. Now, Chris, you
right? Okay. Well, that's not the show's editorial policy. Carry on.
Sorry, Ollie. He's just expressed the. I think you laughed. Now, you might have done it with disdain or disgust or genuine humour, but the point is, would you take that seriously as a death threat? Advertising.
No, that's not a death threat. It's
yes,
that's right.
It's just maybe could be viewed as in a poor taste, depending on your view, but. That's it.
That's right. Well, and what's wrong with that?
It's not a viable death threat. Much like if I make a comment that some person is being a criminal subversive and trying to proselytise the virtues of the EU, that when I make comment are nothing more than a Nazi sympathiser, and that by our constitution, the crimes that they're committing being capital crimes that wing, that is not a death threat either.
Let me bring this
depends
to...
how it's construed. I mean, example, if we take that man who was given, I think, 4 or 5 years the other day, the neo-Nazi chap, who on his group, his thread, he's a disturbed lad, but he's been given a sentence for his beliefs. There was no credible threat, and I'm not justifying his beliefs in any shape, manner, or form, but a group of lads who get together and have a view, like, I don't know, football supporters on terraces who are non-violent. You're entitled to freedom of speech. The angry men, the left-wing poets and playwrights of the 1960s, no one prosecuted them for saying down with capitalism, bring down the government. Wherein lies the crossover between the left-wing angry men and the right-wing angry men?
Yes, absolutely. Completely agree. That's very strange. I've got a call coming in from Olly Connelly. I am Olly Connelly. That's very odd. Oh, blimey. That is because I've got my call settings. It's Colin Duff is calling in, but I cannot take the call without cutting these guys off. Colin, I apologise, mate. Look, do me a favour and call me on the telephone number at the bottom of the screen, as opposed to Skyping me, because I think that way you'll be able to get through. So, okay, all right. We are seeing maybe a bit of a change. Finally, having gone down this route of political correctness, and just becoming more and more boring as a society, and swapping some cracking comedy from my youth for the kind of stuff which isn't comedy anymore. It's excruciating type comedy. I mean, like The Office, for example, that David Brent and all that. That wasn't exactly laugh out loud, was it? It was.
Oh, some of it was cringeworthy to the point. I enjoyed it.
Cringeworthy, but that's not the same kind of belly laugh stuff that we had with, I don't know, not the 9 o'clock news or Blackadder or Dick Emery or the Morecambe and Wise.
Here was an irony. After my first police interview, following my arrest, I declined to be represented because I thought freedom of speech. I've done nothing wrong. What the hell am I here for? When they said, do you want a lawyer to be in presence? I said, no, it's all right. I can. Anyway, so the interview was about 2.5 hours long. In the subsequent summary of that interview, the detective, who I don't think I'm allowed to name, yes, I can. He's called Anthony King. I've named him, and there's no restriction. He said, Lord St. David's comes from a different era of comedy. He is like Alf Garnett, and which in today's world is politically incorrect. Now, the irony is that Alf Garnett was bloody funny, but he was a left-wing protester. His entire comedic setup was to express what he found wrong about a conservative society.
Yeah, that's
now, how ridiculous is that? I've been associated with Alf Garnett, who was a left red flag waving guy, and I thought his comedy was very funny, as I think most of the nation did.
It was.
Yet I'm now being prosecuted for it, and Chris, I got 12 weeks in prison for it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, absolutely incredible.
No, which is, in my personal opinion, it was that for what you said. I don't personally see that there was necessarily a crime even committed. I would say it would be the only type of crime that you could justifiably call it would be a thought crime, which means we're in 1984. Thank you very much.
That's what it feels like.
I don't really want to be living in George Orwell's texts. They were designed to be a warning, not an instruction manual.
Well, Chris, it comes back to the start of the conversation, which is the separation of state and our criminal justice system, which at some point along the way become conjoined. Our criminal justice system takes the lead from the political colour of the day.
Yeah, and or the political colour of the day before, as you see when you have appointments. For example, the creation of the Supreme Court in the UK. There was no need for the creation of the Supreme Court. That was a thing that was created by Tony Blair. There was no need for it. We've got, you mentioned earlier, the Department of Public Prosecutions and the CPS. Neither one of those actually has a need to exist, and they have been put in place to replace something that was perfectly acceptable, but was. And if we look at history, it was actually Fabians that removed. In every case, has removed the original vestiges. I can say it. Vestiges. I know I can't. Not
vestiges.
Come on.
Yeah, but yeah, it's
like Virgin.
We removed them. Some with something else to do that role. Well, it served us perfectly well. Why is there a need to remove it? Oh, is it because those systems are less open? Say, the grand jury system is less open to political subversion than any other system.
Yeah. Okay, let me just take a few comments here.
That would, sorry.
That's Colin. Colin, bear with me a sec. Yeah. Okay, just gonna put in a few comments here. Elaine Howe says liberal leftists have no sense of humour. Armin Armoud, who according to Facebook is a top fan. Hey, I mean, this is a new thing that Facebook are doing. Ollie's been cloned by the Russians. Or boring Joe Brand, says Ed Standard. I mean, yes. I mean, how dull is that woman, quite frankly? John Middleton, spitting image. When you said take the P out of the government, a spitting image was awesome and it really was funny. Love The Office, says Lee Lewis. So cringe, but loved it. And also says Gavin and Stacey, very funny. Sarah Boland, the two Ronnies were brilliant. Wordsmiths as well. Leah Lewis, loved Alf Garnett too, but yes, he was a lefty. I loved Love Thy Neighbour, says Elaine Howe. And, Sid James and Hattie Jakes as well. I mean, they were awesome. She wasn't in Love Thy Neighbour, he was. Just brilliant stuff. Love Thy Neighbour was brilliant, says Julie Johnson. Sarah Boland, the Phantom Raspberry Blower of Old London Town. That was that Dick Emery, the Phantom Raspberry Blower? Oh, that was probably two Ronnies.
It was two
Ronnies.
Two Ronnies. But what you're saying, Ollie, in actual fact, is the comedy reflected social issues of the time, and freedom of speech allows for elaboration of that. If we look at Love Thy Neighbour, you've got a Jamaican family that have moved into a street and who are clearly at conflict, and that's how people felt at the time. Mm-hmm. And the only outlet of expression was comedy that could be broadcast. Mm-hmm. If you recall, shortly after that period, you then had the National Front, where people were being unacceptable. But to be frank, I think everything which is difficult in life that needs to be explained, the rabbi jokes, the rabbi versus the Muslim versus the Irishman, all that in the spirit of comedy, there's always, or should be, a truism to comedy, because comedy is about conflict.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that brings me on to the thing I wanted to put into the mix. Chat.
Colin Duff, please, sir.
Hi, everybody.
Colin Duff.
Yeah, right. I'm far from a conspiracy theorist, but I like to see it as a jigsaw puzzle and put the pieces together. I think the sea change in our society happened when the left wing did away with two-tier education. What that did was, what it was supposed to do was take the brightest kids, leave them into our schools, and then lift the educational standard of the less bright kids. In fact, what happened over the last 30 or 35, even 40 years, is the reverse of that. So that was a construct of the left. So what we end up with is we have a group of kids who are of equal stupidity, but they are being taught by a leftist organisation with leftist views. You only need to look back 40 years to see that there's truth in that. What you're getting now is then bring Blair in, where he opens the floodgates. He knew who was going to come here when the floodgates come open. It was going to be the Muslim people. So all we need to do is we need to have a left that sympathises with anti-Semitism, and you've all automatically got your route directly to Downing Street. It's taken them 40 to 50 years, but they're getting there. And unless we can do something radical about it to stop it, they're going to get there. And this country is going to go the same way as all of the modern-day communist countries. It's going to last for 20 years. It's going to end up in absolute anarchy, and then we're going to be back on our asses again. That's how I see it.
Colin, I've got 3 brief comments. First of all, you're absolutely spot on in the diminution of our education system and eradication of grammar schools. And what you have is a common ideology amongst the teaching group, the teaching class at that time. So the syllabus was left-wing. I've forgotten the second point. The third point, actually is rather more interesting. I think is the in a slightly opaque way, the election results in Istanbul, Turkey, which in actual fact shows us that a society comes around to thinking that religion should not be the way of national politics. Ataturk determined Turkey had been the battleground between Christianity previously and the Muslim nation or Islamic nation. He said the only way that we can thrive as a Turkey, which is a bloody big place, is if we are secular and in a way tolerant. The Erdogan government, all of a sudden, the people are saying, look, whether you're Muslim, Christian, agnostic, devil worshipper, it doesn't matter. As a nation, we need to be tolerant and not led by a principal religion. Compare that to the UK, where Her Majesty is, of course, the head of the Church of England. We are tolerant of all religions, as long as you're not violent. Don't disrupt our bloody society. We'll tolerate whatever you want to do. In Japan...
The whole problem with that is that the leftist agenda is actually harnessing that hatred, and it's pushing it. I mean, you know, you see that moron sit in the House of Commons, and they all shout anti-Semitism, get your own house in order. He sort of says, yeah, we're going to do that. And the next thing you know, the woman that's won Peterborough by-election, by foul means, trust me, right, is an anti-Semite. And that has, sort of muddied the waters. So if
there are reports,
not an anti-Semite, it doesn't stir up the vote of the Islamic vote up there, they come a second to the Brexit party. But add that to the shenanigans and the general, and it's the way of the country. They need to spread out. They've got the power in London now. They've turned London almost into an Islamic state. Now they're spreading out across the country. It's not done for Islamists. It's done for the leftists. That's what they're about.
Colin, I agree with you. Quick question for you. If you were writing a policy advice, how would you change things, in your view?
Well, they've tried it, haven't they? But they're not trying hard enough. I think, first of all, let's just get Boris out of the way. What we need is... Boris is a bludgeon. I do not give 2 tosses if he fails after we've got Brexit out of the way. We need somebody that's going to go in there like he did in that football game, put his head down and knock the bloke off the ball. That's what we need. We need him. We don't need a male version of May in Hunt. We need somebody who's got a bit of a backbone, and then we just need to get behind him in the scrum and push him over there. And then if he blows up in November after it's all done, I don't care. We're out. Then we can set policy. Right, now back to the policy setting. What we need to do is make sure that we get rid of the Blairites in the Conservative Party. There is a way to do that. A lot more people now have awoke in this last 3 years. This good's come out of it. In this last 3, I've been with politics since I go back to Heath and Wilson, right? But in the last 3 years, many people have woken up to politics, and many, many, many people are seeing what's going on. I think even the right wing of the Conservative Party have noticed that all the rest of them, these people that want to overturn Brexit, are indeed Blairites. May, all that mob down there, it's a 30-60 split, isn't it? So we need to get conservatism back to being conservatives. Then we can take leftism or Blairism off of the agenda. Then we need to reintroduce a balanced education system. I would prefer to see, a lot of people are against this for the wrong reason. I would prefer to see going back to grammar school, because it was a catch net for the bright people. When we went to full-blown comprehensive system, what happened was all the bright people fell through the net, and then you end up having to dumb down the education until eventually, the exams we passed in primary school, that they're using that for A-levels now.
Stephen, please, just briefly, Colin, just briefly, just on that topic. Stephen Place, last night, regional chair for UKIP and ex-copper, he was saying on that very subject, he was saying the other thing is that at the moment we're trying to, because of these targets in schools, we're trying to make all kids, one size fits all and get them all to university or whatever. And the fact is that not all kids are suitable for that. And there should not be any stigma about learning a trade, the old-fashioned way, becoming an apprentice and all the rest of it. And we need to encourage that. Sorry, carry on.
A consequence of doing away with the two-tier system was that what went along with grammar schools were technical colleges.
Yes.
Okay? What there were, in the old system, there were opportunities for absolutely everybody. In this system, there's opportunities for absolutely nobody. And that suits the leftist agenda, because what the leftists don't want are people who are capable of thinking. What they want is people who are capable of believing what they're told. Goes back to, I've just done a little piece on Facebook now. I think it was in Mein Kampf. Hitler said, "You don't have to tell the truth. All you need to be is convincing in the lie, and eventually, the people will believe the lie. They will perpetuate it, and your job then is done." Okay?
Colin,
that little extract comes out of the Communist Manifesto. Okay? We just need some people to pick up some proper history books, look at what happened, look at the way we're being steered. But the problem we've got is anybody under the age of 40 who identifies as European, we've already lost them. They've gone.
Colin, the point I want to make is one of the statements you made earlier, that it's taken them 40 years effectively to almost win. When to change the system is going to take an equivalent period of time, and it needs strength and discipline, because you can't change one or two generations in that period. It's going to
take 40 years, Roger, to get back. And one of the other key things was one of the things that you banged on about, your hereditary peership, right? I don't like the House of Lords per se as it is now, but when it was the first conception of it, when it was conceived back in the day, where only 10%, not only 10% of the people were educated and literate, it made sense. What they're trying to do, what Blair's tried to do with the way the Lords is set up now, is trying to make that nonsensical system fit into a society where 90% of the people are literate, and we know what's going on now. In my opinion, people like you, from where you come from, blue blood, call it what you want. You can call yourself what you like. It doesn't matter to me.
He calls himself Rodders.
I've always thought that people like yourself have got the goodwill and of this country and the best interest of this country at heart. All these buggers that are pushed in there from the Commons are just what they are. They're political puppets. And you can see it, can't you? Look at it now. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
The problem is, we've got cronies. Oi, Colin, take a breath, man. Colin, take a breath. It's a chat show. We've got cronies in both houses now, haven't we? The Lords is crammed full of cronies. That Lord Adonis, for crying out loud. People like that, who've never won an election in their lives. And there are some lord or whatever, I don't know, it's just an absolute joke.
That guy
Boozy,
makes the back of my eyes itch.
Boozy, what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on this?
On the Lords, well, for one, I say that we can't turn the clock back, so we have to look forward. However, if we look at the hereditary peers, what they originally were the descendants of the barons. And that's why the hereditary peers were attacked, because they knew their history, they knew where they came from and what their forefathers had fought for, and it was a matter of family honour to keep that going, and keep the constitution true. That is what the Lords was set up to do. It was set up to keep the Commons in check and ensure that, while yes, the people elect the Commons and they put forward policies, that the Lord should be there to ensure that some person, for example, a Hitler type, a Heath type, doesn't subvert the constitution by conning the people.
Absolutely.
And so what I would say now is, because we cannot close the door after the horse has bolted. It's the stable door after the horse has bolted. It makes no sense. We can't do it. So we can't just go back to the way things were. So what I would suggest, and it was something that I put forward as an idea, is when I was in UKIP, and the idea I had was, why don't we have term limits? But the thing is, they're not elected. What I'm talking about is we have certain people from certain fields. For example, the chief of the defence staff gets a peerage on the completion of his time of duty, and he goes to the Lords for 2 terms. And by the time that comes through, but I can't see. I can't see how we can bring back the hereditary system. Really,
Chris, the anachronism was, and I was extraordinarily privileged to have access to the House of Lords as the eldest son when my father was serving. And in those days, you got 50 quid a day to cover your expenses, and if you could justify a secretary, that was it. Now it's 350 quid a day plus almost any expense that you can. So there is a financial motive. In my father's day, there was none. Is the reality. The point being is, if you limit it to 2 terms, you will, by definition, exclude people who are the experts in their fields. And what the House of Lords represented across the life peers and the hereditaries is, you had an expert on every single topic, being if you go from lead shot in fishing to swans, IVF, you name it, and they were there for an awful long time, and they appeared as a sense of duty. It was a matter of patronage. The folks who the media settled on, where you had 1 or 2 who were taking the piss, frankly, who would turn up and it was all a Johnny good lunch. But the rest of them actually were there in it. They'd had a good career in whatever chosen field, but they were expert. So whatever government business came up, you knew in the House of Lords, when it came to debate over legislation, you had a guy who was absolutely top of his field, no matter how obscure. With your fixed term idea, you lose a lot of that brain power.
Well, part of the reason I was saying that is because generally my view was that the experts in the field would be getting into the Lords at a certain time within their life. So by doing such things, you kind of, by giving them amount of term, you're letting the next people or position take over. So after 2 terms, you've got one guy, you've already had one new chief defence staff come in, and that way you're having the experts, but in the same way, you're also dealing with the potential of you're not also, when selling to the public, you're not going to have that vision that you currently do of the old men asleep on the red benches.
Well,
maybe, or some of them. For example, the one who was suffering from senility and Alzheimer's, but still claiming money.
I mean, there should be checks and balances in that, but I see where you're going with that. But the problem you've got is Erskine May is the procedural book for the House of Commons that was set by the Lords. As Roger's saying, this was done by people who knew what they were talking about. And trust me, if we had the old setup now, the old hereditary peer setup, the case that's up before judiciary now about leaving Brexit would have already been in front of the beak, and it would have been decided by now. What you've got now is we all know and we all realise we've got career politicians in the Commons, but what we seem to overlook all the time is now we've got career Lords, and that is absolutely ludicrous.
Absolutely correct. It's destroyed the second chamber. And the earlier point you made, Colin, about why did we need a Supreme Court? Well, I'll answer that. It was Tony Blair wanting his name to go down in history as the great moderniser. He's the modern Cromwell in his own eyes.
He politicised the judiciary by setting that up, though, didn't he? I mean, effectively,
exactly.
Was that not the aim?
We've survived with our law lords, who were the highest court. If there was a challenge, our equivalent in the old days was you went to the House of Lords, and if you passed, a series of objective and also subjective tests about your experience, you became a law lord. We never had an issue with that. Tony Blair turns up, and as a vanity project, I'm Tony Blair, I'm going to change the entire system. I will go down in history. So he changed something that was already working.
Did he have the lawful authority to do that, though?
Well, yes.
Well, no, he put it through Parliament to get it passed. But the thing is, it's the agenda. It plays into the agenda I was speaking of earlier. It's the 50-year plan. That had to happen in order for the rise of power of the Marxists again now, because the Lords, had they been as they were, this nonsense wouldn't be going on now. They'd have stamped it out.
Colin,
if you look at any of the establishment institutions now, they are full of lefties everywhere.
And
that's right.
I think you've got to look, Colin. You've got to look at the motives. If you look at the composition of the House of Lords today, most of them are political appointees, and when you've got the government of the left, they appoint more of their lot than they do the other lot. And you've got some extraordinary names in there. I don't want to be personal about them, but they have no relevance to the House of Lords or government of the United Kingdom. If you donate £500,000 to the nation, well, jolly good, but that does not qualify you, in actual fact, to pass legislation.
Adonis, case in point.
With all this talk on lefties and
I don't know whether they're lefties or what.
Nature, can we actually get onto the topic of political correctness and the history of
absolutely.
This? That might actually
good man, Chris. Good man. I don't know whether they're lefties or what. The bottom line is that they're bored. I think that's look. That's my opinion. I want to take a few comments here. Ed Stanton: the House of Lords should be an elected body. Desmond Ogden says, prime example, no deal will not get through the Commons. This is a lie. It's the legal default to leave, deal or no deal. A deal is just a stall to stay in. Anyone, including Bojo, says otherwise are not trustworthy. Good point, Desmond. John D. Rice says it's the second biggest unelected chamber, referring to the Lords, presumably, outside communist China. A bloody joke, and the taxpayers picks up the bill. A joke. Go on.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, Ollie. I think the same is true of Brussels. At what point did Neil Kinnock face election for his appointment as a sort of lifelong commissioner in
absolutely.
Brussels? So in actual fact,
all the
don't blame the
technocrats.
Chinese.
All the technocrats that are setting policy and telling the EU Parliament what to rubber stamp. And actually, I met one of them at a wedding, sat on the same table as me, and she told me, "Oh yeah, but I've done all these qualifications." I said, "I don't care. You haven't been elected, have you?" And I think that my hosts who were getting married were somewhat put out that they'd put us on the same table. But anyway, Anthony Pobiatzin says Maybot don't want Bojo in number 10. And just a bit of a story briefly there, just so that you know, apparently Theresa May, according to the Not So Independent, the Saudi-sponsored independent, or part-owned independent, Theresa May to stand down and hand over to the new Prime Minister on the 24th of July. The timing of the PM's departure means her successor may not have to face the Commons until September. Theresa May will step down as Prime Minister and hand over to her successor on the afternoon of Wednesday the 24th of July, Downing Street has said. The timing of her departure means that she will take the final session of Prime Minister's questions before the House of Commons breaks up for the summer the following day, and her successor may not have to appear before MPs until September. MPs have raised concerns that the arrangements will allow the new PM, widely expected to be Boris Johnson, to evade scrutiny for 6 weeks at a crucial moment for the Brexit process. Independent
Ollie, a very good point.
Go on.
If Boris can be trusted to stand by his word and say, we are out, come what may, there is not sufficient parliamentary time, in actual fact, for any new laws to be passed. You can have emergency laws, but that ain't going to happen with a new Prime Minister. You think about it, they're all on holiday through the month of August. They reassemble, I think, the second week of September. And then there we are. We've got 5 weeks, effectively, of government business time, during which a new manifesto will be announced, or a new order of business, and October 31st. That's when Bojo will show his true colours. Are we in or are we out? Simple question.
One thing he's done today, which is very interesting, he has appointed Ian Duncan Smith as his campaign chairman, who will be working closely with James Wharton, who ran the campaign to win votes amongst Tory MPs, and political strategist Mark Fulbrook. Ian Duncan Smith is definitely a WTO's kind of a guy. That's a good sign, is it not?
I think he needs the key to all of this is getting Hammond out. We need somebody
Philip Hammond,
alter the narrative, is going to tell the truth about the WTO terms.
He will kick him out. There's no way Hammond would be involved in a Bojo government, surely. He would surely get rid of somebody as moron as him.
Ollie, that he's actually still doing much damage to the cause now. I mean, he's still there and he's still playing the same old... I mean, they've lost the economic argument, but they just keep banging on about it the whole time. So if you get him out, his influence over Carney goes, and then the narrative can be brought round. There's a lot of Conservatives who are borderline Remainers because they're concerned with the economy. The proper Conservatives, and rightly so, because they've been fed all this nonsense. If we can start feeding them the reality and demonstrating that that's the truth, then I think the calls will be a lot easier. But all the time that Hammond is in job, we can't do that. The whole cabinet, I feel, needs to be 75% leave this time, not 75% remain as it was.
Actually, Colin, the other name that you mentioned, but actually does bear special consideration, is Mark Carney. It is not within the remit or job of the Governor of the Bank of England to start issuing, let's gaze into the crystal ball as to what happens with our economy. He is there to report the results of the economy as a glorified accountant. Mervyn King has been brilliant in being reserved in his comments on him. But you know what? A strong Prime Minister, I don't hate to say it at all, Margaret Thatcher would have fired Mark Carney.
Yeah, without a doubt. The only thing that Gordon Brown ever did properly, the only good thing that man ever did was to depoliticise the Bank of England.
Okay, all right. I want to get back on to the PC stuff. Tomorrow with Mr. H, with Robin Horsley, we're going to be discussing this in some detail. And Colin, if you'd like to call and have a chat, that would be awesome. But I do want to get back to a bit more about tonight's theme before we wrap up. But actually, before I do, I want to take a detour. And I want to ask you, because a lot of people do want to know, Rodders, what is the deal with Robin Tilbrook's case now, please?
Okay, the situation is this, as best I understand it. The application is before the High Court. The timetable that we've been allocated is pari passu with that of Gina Miller. So there is no question of prejudice thus far in listing and the court timetable.
Right.
We're hoping for a first hearing in the High Court in the next few weeks. If you follow the Gina Miller timetable, that means at some point in September. However, the difference between the Gina Miller campaign and ours is that there's been a media blackout. None of the British media are prepared to report on the specifics and details of the case. Mm-hmm. In the run-up to the Gina Miller case, if you Google it on the timeline, lots of political theorists were strategizing and theorizing on the likely outcome.
Yeah.
The reality is that our PR campaign is going to have to be challenged through America. Following the successful Trump visit to the UK, mainstream broadsheet newspapers and press in America are thrilled to be given the opportunity of reporting on what is a fundamental element of law in the UK. And they're surprised that Britain, the BBC, they basically, off record have said to us, look, we've been told by our bosses, however so influenced, we can't report on it. Now, isn't that shocking? The country of tolerance of religion, the country of freedom of speech, and our own press can't report on a simple, well, actually it is a simple legal case, but they don't want to. Who's leaning down on them? Why is it we're having to go through America?
Yeah,
and in actual fact, it would expose the ownership of the British press.
Were you not told by a member of the BBC that they had been instructed not to report on the case? Was that not?
That's absolutely correct. And it was an off-the-record remark, so we don't want to go any further with that. Mm-hmm. But, in an honest statement, we've been told, do not report on the Tilbrook case. So the media campaign is being adjusted via America. Our friends over there versus our friends on the other side of the compass in Europe.
So we're essentially looking at what sort of date do you think until we see this hearing transpire?
Well, do you know what? If you follow the Gina Miller case, there's a possibility we'll fit in at some unlikely, but possibly in July, because then you have the recess, which is when the court shut down. They'll be up and going again in September, so we hopefully we get a listing date then.
Makes you wonder if they're trying to.
Makes you wonder if they're trying to fudge it in such a way that if there's a result that goes against Mr. Tilbrook, it's going to be during summer recess when everybody's silly season kind of thing, and it can just be.
Well, that's slightly conspiratorial. In actual fact, if you look at the fundamentals of the case, and I invite everyone to go into the legal papers, which are a matter of public record, to find fault in the merits of the case. In actual fact, if we get a proper Brexiteer as a Prime Minister, it gives him absolutely every leverage required to say to Europe, you know what, October 31st, we're already out.
Yeah.
October 31st is a fictitious date, and I have no choice in the matter. Theresa May, excuse my French, fucked it up royally.
Sir, family show.
Learn the whole... sorry.
I understand the frustration. I understand the frustration. I mean, just go on, please.
Just to finish, it means that an incoming premier can actually say, look, I have been handed the poison chalice. The number of boring dinner parties in Chelsea, blah, 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 that I've attended where people say, "Oh, poor Theresa May, she was handed the poison chalice." No, she was not.
No, she wasn't.
Fought for the position of Prime Minister. She was a willing party to the process.
She threw away the trump cards. She could have said, talk trade or bugger off. Instead of which she said, oh, do you want 39 billion? Absolutely useless. There's no way she can be given any credit whatsoever. And the other thing that she's done, by the way, is she's signed up to the UN Migration Compact during her premiership. Very, very little talk about that, no? Okay, I want to get back to okay. That's where we are with Tilbrook. That's for anybody that isn't aware. The bottom line, Robin Tilbrook's legal case hinges on Theresa May having extended Article 50 without an Act of Parliament, and so no Act of Parliament to overturn the pre-existing Act of Parliament. That was taking us out on the 29th of March. Is that correct, Rodders? Have I got that right?
The answer is correct. The Precipe, the Gina Miller case, was that in international treaty law, only Parliament could enact a withdrawal from treaty that the previous governments had signed, and they were all authorised by Acts of Parliament. So yes. Theresa May had to go back to Parliament to get any extension, because when you have the Withdrawal Act, which has been passed by Parliament, that has an index date of March 29th, 1 o'clock in the morning, our time, that's it. Without the approval of Parliament, it's not for Theresa May, who has admitted publicly and in writing she took no legal advice from the Attorney General, and she accepted that it was an executive decision, which had been denied to her in the previous Gina Miller case. It is an absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and as an aside, when you hear them bleating on Radio 4, Evan Davis, for example, the other day I heard bleating that there was no Commons will, no parliamentary will for there to be a no deal. Well, mate, I'm sorry, but there is. And they put it in an Act of Parliament and sealed it and voted on it. So stop talking such nonsense. Okay, let's get back to just going to kind of wrap up in a minute. But I just want to go through before asking Chris what he thinks about this, and if he can tell us a little bit about the origin of political correctness. Because Spiked Online have got an interesting story here. Blasphemy is now a sackable offence. An Asda worker has lost his job for sharing an anti-Islamic Olly Connelly video. If you're not a fan of religion or political correctness, then it looks like a job at Asda isn't for you. Examiner Live reports that Brian Leach, a 54-year-old disabled till worker, has been sacked from his job in a Dewsbury Asda because he shared a Olly Connelly video about religion on his political Facebook page. This is on his personal Facebook page, I apologise. This is a case so mad and authoritarian that it really makes you double take. He says he was grassed up by a colleague from head office who found the joke offensive. I was then pulled into a meeting a couple of weeks later, Leach told Examiner Live. I was summarily dismissed without notice following a disciplinary meeting for breaching the company's social media policy. You know, I mean, Chris, man, what does it tell us? That you can't even take the P out of fantasy fairy, tooth fairy fanatics, for crying out loud. I mean, it's just an absolute joke, no?
Yeah. Well, I would probably be strung up for the level of blasphemy that I have. I basically, they try and say with the Abrahamic faiths that they're more or less a muchness, and it's just the methods of worship and a few little bits that are different. I can't square the ideology of Islamic that of the one that was described in Christianity. The one that's described in Christianity is one that's bound by love, and forgiveness, where the other one is in Islamic theology is bound by vengeance and subjugation. They don't seem like they could be a person. So
is it not fair enough, sir? Whether you're religious or not, Chris, let me ask you a question, sir. Is it not fair enough for us to have a discussion and to be able to rib tickle each other as to who's right and wrong? I mean, for example, one of my favourite films of all time, Life of Brian, awesome movie. It doesn't mean that I don't have faith, but the other thing is people that go on.
I get what you mean, and I have no problem with things like that. And my point actually is, I like to get the wooden spoon out sometimes.
Really?
I actually look at Islamic theology, looking at that and go, well, actually, could we not say that Muhammad is the false prophet as foretold to follow Jesus? And therefore, would that mean that the God that he says he's trying to get his people to worship isn't actually the God, but the beast? Which would therefore make every single Muslim a Satanist.
Okay.
We're now getting very interesting territory.
Yeah, we are. But we shouldn't be allowed.
That level of blasphemy is going to get you sacked, isn't it?
Can we not?
That's theological debate.
Can we not?
That's perfectly reasonable.
Exactly.
Chris, I hate to say, I'll come over the lads to protect you, but there's this fatwa from east of Beirut.
But the fact is, we should be allowed to discuss these things. That Bojo bloke, if he sees somebody who's
the whole idea behind freedom of speech. Freedom of speech.
Where is the protection for atheists? Yeah, I'm not an atheist myself, but where is the protection for people that don't have any faith? Why shouldn't they be given protection as well to be able to express their beliefs?
Well, hang on a sec. Where's the protection for devil worshippers?
Well, actually, they've got quite a lot in the States now, haven't they?
When people like Hillary Clinton are, people like that are kind of well protected, aren't they?
So, okay, all right, yeah. If somebody's a devil worshipper, and they wanted to come on this show and have a chat with me about their religion, I'd say, yeah, come on, let's have a chat. I'll be interested to hear what they got to say. It wouldn't mean that I'd agree with them, and maybe I would give them up. And you would
happily have other people on to debate them about their beliefs.
Yes.
And their ethics.
Is that somehow, should that not be allowed? Are we not allowed to discuss certain things? Are we not allowed to discuss the misogyny that is involved, arguably, with Sharia law, for example?
That's dumbing down of society, isn't it? If we can't debate things, then we can't.
Well, actually, John, there is a historical reference to this. And if you think about Galileo, as a specific example, when he challenged the might of the Catholic Church. Speaking as a Roman Catholic myself, Chris, I'm a left footer, rock cake, but hardcore. The point being, the world is round. It's not flat. Gravity. We then had Darwinianism, which again challenged beliefs, and the authorities, as they were in the day, challenged Darwin and called him an atheist and all sorts of things. And Galileo was nearly banged up and garroted. But nonetheless, these are the elements of modern science that I don't think conflict with my religion as a Roman Catholic. But freedom of debate, freedom of speech is essential to any evolving society. Yeah. And let's face it, as a society, how long actually we got scripted in history? 3, 4, 5,000 years? We got the Egyptian kings, we've got the Syrian mob, we got all that lot. And then all of a sudden, we've got it condensed in the last 150 years, where apparently we become civilized, and the rise of the liberal left, where freedom of speech is denied, a natural right.
Sarah Boland, she's worried about the pagans. Sarah, you can come on and have a chat about the pagans.
Well, I am pagan.
Are you? Are you?
Mm-hmm. Huh. I am a pagan minister.
Right.
But my belief is that Christ came, to quote the Bible, "I come not for the Jews but for the Gentiles." I believe he was a pagan Messiah.
Does that mean that you eat hamsters and things like that?
No.
Does that mean
when he came for the Gentiles, he was gunning for the Gentiles. It's, guys, you got to step up to the plate, fellas, or you're headed down to hell. I say
if you start reading things like Thomas, for example, the Gospel of Thomas is, for example, an extremely pagan. If you look at it, if you read the theology of that, and we all know that the Council of Nicaea was just a political move, in that it was headed by the head of the Roman Empire, the emperor, who was not of the faith, to create a new religion for the Roman Empire that would be acceptable to both the Jewish, those of the Jewish ancestry, such. Those of Jewish ancestry who wanted to keep Christianity down the Jewish line, and those of the Roman ancestry who wanted to have a religion which could be controlled, and you needed an intermediary in which to connect to God, which is how they had it in their pagan tradition, and create that said religion. And those books that were deemed to be non-canonical, i.e. not fitting with what they wanted, they tried to destroy and tried to then exterminate those people who extolled said virtues.
Nice.
I think this is for another program. I'm just peeking around the corner of a rather nice lady.
Yes. Yeah. Are you? Yes. I think we all are, because it's that time of day, and I want to say, geezers.
We still haven't gone through the history of PC.
Oh, for crying out loud! I know we haven't. Look, Chris, we're gonna have to do that another time, mate. We're gonna have to do that another time,
Olly,
because
I've spent all night boiling under this bloody smoking jacket, and I haven't had the lighting to demonstrate it. I just wanted to go slightly Roger Moore. Okay.
Yeah. You've got to do the eyebrows. You've got to lift the eyebrow. Only one. That there you go.
Okay,
that's it. Lovely.
What I'll do then, Ollie, is I'll type this up into my notes up to some logical order, and I will attach it to the video, so that we got a bit of a history of. If you'd like that,
mate, I appreciate that, because the thing is that I have to tell you, my bladder is not feeling at all PC, and so there you go. Aye. Yeah. Oh. I want to say, oh blimey, I want to say a big cheers to my special guest tonight. To Chris Boozy, God bless him, the very special Reverend Boozy of the paganistic light types and all that. Hold on, what's going on with that? There you go. And Viscount St David's. Yeah, Struth, another very PC bloke. And to Colin Duff for calling in. Thank you, Colin. And I'll leave you with a bit of story about Boris Johnson. Has said he makes models of buses out of old wine crates to relax. Which begs the question, does he remember to put windows that go down? Didn't they have to change all the bendy buses in London because he forgot the windows or something? The former Mayor of London, whose term in office included the introduction of the new Boris bus to the capital streets, said he liked... I don't know. Anyway, he likes to paint buses, yeah? Hey?
I think you'll find that some of the water cannons that he acquired, there are two that obviously were kept in reserve because they were brought out against the eco-warriors gluing themselves to trees in Parliament Square.
Aye, yes. Yes. Talking of protests, 29th, you're going to be there, yeah? You're going to be there, Viscount St David's.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is a reference to Chris Booze's talking about Soldier F earlier, Soldiers A to Z, and that is going on Saturday. And it's not just a protest, folks, it's a sit-in. a sit-in. They're taking their tents, they're taking their sleeping bags. And Dan McDevitt is here on Thursday at 8 o'clock GMT to give us a bit of a what's going on, bit of a rundown. Tomorrow, Robin Horsley is here, Mr. H, to tell us about GATT24, whatever that is. Apparently it's important. It is important. And everybody's going to be talking about it now. So big Boris stroke Hunt show. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, those two, I mean, oh, blimey, I tell you what. At least if Boris is in, we're going to have a laugh. If we have Hunt, can you imagine? We're going to all be so bored of tears. Anyway, that's it. Daily Breaks, I'm Olly Connelly. I'll see you tomorrow at 7. God bless you. Here's to us and bugger plutocracy.